That's got to be the best part I've ever seen.
Hey guys, just a quick heads up, this video is sponsored by War Thunder. More on them though in a short bit. Well, here we are over halfway through 2026 with the latest video game remake to be added to the pile. This time with Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, a remake of the original 2013 entry, which is easily one of the best games in the series, as well as arguably being the most popular. And thanks to Ubisoft Australia, I was able to get my hands on Resynced a little early, and I've already sunk a couple dozen hours into it over the last week or so.
Not quite.
Now, I don't think I really need to talk about Black Flag directly in the sense that most people already know what the whole thing's about, as it's one of the most popular games in the series for a pretty good reason. And I'm guessing that when it comes to Resynced, that most people have already decided if they're going to pick it up or not, just based off how they feel about the original.
That's a top way of seeing it, mate.
If you're one of those people though who hasn't played Black Flag since it first launched, or maybe you haven't played it at all, well, then this is honestly a pretty easy recommendation. So if that's all you're wondering, well, you can probably just stop watching the video right now. What I think is more interesting to talk about though is all of the updates and the changes they've made with this remake, because it's not entirely beat for beat, with some pretty massive updates here and there, some of which I think are pretty good and some of which I don't. In regards to the plot, nothing's really been altered there, and you're still playing as Edward Kenway, a privateer turned pirate who leaves his life in Wales for a better future.
I'm Edward.
Essentially leaving behind a smoking hot wife, all for the prospect of gainful employment. Yeah, what an idiot. Anyway, he soon acquires a ship of his own named the Jackdaw, and then gets caught up in that centuries-old war between the Assassins and the Templars, getting a hidden blade of his own and a snazzy cow to go along with it. But part of what made Black Flag so good as an Assassin's Creed game was that at times it almost wasn't an Assassin's Creed game. Because while Edward might walk the walk, he doesn't really talk the talk. And the vast majority of the story was about the guy actually ignoring the order and going off and doing his own thing. In fact, it wasn't even until right at the end of the story in the final few sequences where he really got all that serious about it, finally understanding the gravity of what was going on.
Sorry, mate. Wish it were otherwise.
Before all of that though, it was almost like the Order and the Templars didn't even exist, outside of a few key missions, and they were really only used as a means to an end for his own goals.
You will be convinced of why we fight as well.
You're a hopeful one. I'll give you that.
Well, the good news is that Resynced is still exactly the same in that regard, in that it's the kind of game you can get lost in for hours on end, just completely losing track of the time of day and doing your own thing. The other night when I hopped on, for instance, to get some more footage, I just ended up shooting up a bunch of ships and grinding out resources for hours to upgrade the Jackdaw, along with going around exploring all the shipwrecks and taking on assassin contracts without even going anywhere near that main story. So I guess the good news is if you're after that experience again, well, you're definitely going to get it. Also too, without all those god-awful interruptions from the original, where they'd periodically pull you out of the Animus and back into the real world.
I just saw you were logging out, so I thought I'd stop by and give you something.
How about new?
Yeah, it seems Ubisoft have finally figured it out that people don't give a shit about all that current day stuff. And outside of a short intro when you're loading into the game for the first time, that's about all you get. There's no intermissions where you're walking around corporate offices chatting to boring, forgettable characters and haven't had computers or any of that nonsense. Which always kind of felt to me like you were going from sitting on the front seat of a roller coaster to sitting in a plastic chair and watching a PowerPoint presentation.
If it were up to me, on s'en crisse. I wouldn't bother.
All of that anima stuff is still there though, with this weirdly battle pass-like progression system. However, this is all entirely optional, and you can play the entirety of Edward's story without having to interact with that stuff a single time. That's a positive change. It's still otherwise, it's all of those story beats and emotional moments with some absolute gut punches towards the end there, which are still really tough to sit through. And it is kind of awesome watching these and seeing them updated into this new engine.
The name's Edward, in truth. Duncan's only a handle.
Ah. Secret name for your secret meeting with the governor.
But before I get too far into things, I do have to stop and thank this video's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is one of the biggest and most ridiculously feature-packed military combat games out there, and one that's also, best of all, completely free to play on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and even mobile, without the need for fancy controllers or flight sticks, and running smoothly across a range of hardware. It packs in over 2,500 playable vehicles, including tanks, aircrafts, helicopters, and warships, all from 10 major nations. So, whether you're into old rickety biplanes from the 1920s, World War II tanks, or modern fighter jets, there's an absurd amount of hardware to get your hands on here. All of which have authentic camouflages, markings, and decorations, so you can really make each vehicle feel like it's your own. And the attention to detail with all of that stuff is seriously impressive, with all the vehicles being highly modelled, along with sound design that absolutely thunders through your speakers, making battles feel chaotic in all the right ways, with every match feeling like a massive military sandbox. And with more than 95 million players worldwide, the fight is never going to end. So if you're even remotely interested in military history, or just want a game that lets you blow stuff up in every vehicle imaginable, well, War Thunder is definitely worth checking out. If you're a new player or someone coming back after not having played for 6 months, you can even score a massive bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive Eagle of Valor Decorator, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of a premium account, which is available on both PC and console. Only around for a limited time though. So yeah, to go play War Thunder for free right now, use my links in the comments or video description. And yeah, once again, thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. And yeah, speaking of graphics, you'll probably notice just how much better the visuals are, with there being a much higher amount of detail, especially when it comes to the environments and some of the character models. For instance, you can see the individual hairs on Edward's arms and chest now, and run along the rooftops in Havana and you can see weeds growing up through all the tiles. When you're exploring all these different islands, there's almost no surface that doesn't have something across it. I mean, it's so dense and every single frame has so much going on.
It's so dense, every single image has so many things going on.
The best effect is after it's been raining for a bit and there's puddles of water everywhere, which of course all have real-time reflections. And walking around during a sunrise or a sunset shows us some really nice effects as well. It can be sunny, cloudy, or stormy, and the environments also react accordingly, with trees swaying around violently in heavy winds, and NPCs covering their faces to protect it from the rain. In terms of the character models, I'd say most of these are also a pretty good step up from the original, especially Caroline, who looks noticeably better now than she used to.
All right. No more than 2. Promise me.
Ooh, I like her.
And I also like the updated look for Stede Bonnet and Adewale.
I think it's turned out to be a rather fortuitous day, hasn't it?
But I still do feel like there's something to be said here about the art style, and I don't know what it is, but I just feel like these environments really look like they could be taken from any recent Anvil Engine game. Whereas you look at the original Black Flag or, any of those older Assassin's Creed games, and you can instantly tell which one it is. Does seem like they've improved a few things since that preview build though, like when you're diving around now for instance, it looks a lot murkier, like the original did.
I am never going back in the water.
And I think overall, it is an objectively better looking game, technically speaking, but it's still definitely lacking that whole 7th generation charm.
Lacking a rowboat, I'm afraid we'll have to swim to my ship.
Hardly the worst thing to happen.
Lacking a rowboat, I'm afraid we'll have to swim to my ship.
Hardly the worst thing to happen.
This is better.
The stuff that really stuck out to me though is all of this new content, especially the cutscenes, where it's just so blatantly obvious when you're watching one of these due to the far more basic animation, where it's pretty much always just people standing around talking with either their hands on their hips or their arms crossed. In fact, you can almost make a drinking game out of it, like take a shot of something every time someone does this.
But that doesn't mean you own me.
Also true.
And just compare this to the cinematics in the original, where characters would walk around and interact with the environment. They'd walk downstairs, they'd sit at chairs, or they'd play with props, where it felt like people who were interacting and being a part of the world they were inhabiting, really bringing the whole thing to life.
Captain Satch, as I live and breathe.
Instead of two people just standing in a medium shot with that same canned animation of having their hands on their hips or a finger on the chin.
What say you to joining us?
You don't mince words, do you?
I don't know, I guess it just shows like a massive difference when you compare the animation to the stuff that's clearly been motion captured.
We like this story, Torres. And we want to help you finish it. But we're going to do it our way.
Gotta say too, like, I'm not too hot on some of these new character models either, like this bloke, the Padre, who looks like one of those characters you'd see in those Unreal Engine 5 videos on YouTube, along with just having this really strong Ubisoft hire this man energy. I did notice too that the audio mixing seems a little bit off in some of the cinematics, like the voices are a bit louder than they should be.
I'm Duncan. What's your name, friend?
Steed Bonnet.
I'm Duncan. What's your name, friend?
Steed Bonnet.
Well, Mr. Bonnet, let this stay twixt us. Well, Mr. Bonnet, let this stay twixt us.
This is also a bit of a man shouting at a cloud moment, but I do want to say too that it does irk me how there's like little to no interaction with other NPCs anymore. Like in the original, if you bumped into someone, Edward would stumble and lose his footing. You know, like what would happen in real life if you ran into someone. Here though, you just sort of float through them as if they're made out of cotton candy. The only real, like, serious downgrade though is the main menu, which is just that generic Animus one they've been using for a while now. And comparing that to the original is no kind of comparison at all. Either way though, when you're running around taking out soldiers with a hidden blade or firing mortars at Spanish ships out in the middle of the ocean, it still at least looks like what you think Black Flag should look like, which is a good thing, right? As for the actual gameplay changes, well, these range from small to not so small. The parkour, for instance, is about the same it's always been, though you definitely move faster now when climbing straight up. With Edward zipping up the side of walls now, like the top of the building owes him money. It's definitely got some of the smoothest parkour the series has ever had, which is kind of ironic considering this is one of the games where you barely ever need to free run. And the only time you ever really get challenged is when you're chasing after those sea shanties, which is more about the fact that you have no idea where those things are headed next. Otherwise, there's not really any failable moments with the platforming, and all of the chase or escape sequences are scripted to the point that you can't delineate off the main path anyway. So about all they've really added there are the zip lines, which let you quickly get down from a higher point. Though to be honest, I think I used about 5 or 6 of these in my entire playthrough. Other smaller changes I'd classify as stuff like the auto-follow feature.
Just what the world needs.
Where during missions you can now just automatically follow behind someone as they walk, which I think is an objective improvement.
This way.
When you're out on the Jackdaw too, if you've set a marker on the map, you can now have the boat follow an automatic path. So you can just chill out and listen to your boys singing shanties. To the point too that you can comfortably walk away from the game, make a cup of tea and come back to find that you're at your marker. One noticeable change though is that you don't get access to the assassin contracts until you actually meet the assassins, which means that all of that early stuff at Havana really gives you little other to do than just focus on the main story. And the contracts are now different as well, with them having different objectives for full completion, outside of just staying undetected. Like for instance, you might have to kill someone from a hiding spot or kill them using explosives. Yeah, that very incredibly timeless assassin method of killing someone by blowing them up. Which I guess has been done so people just can't cheese through all of them using the Berserk dart, considering it was kind of funny how easy it was to complete them with that thing alone. Speaking of objectives, it is also worth mentioning that they've gotten rid of those optional objectives during each of the main missions. Now this was a feature where you'd have to meet specific requirements during missions to get fully synchronized, like completing it without getting into combat or maybe killing someone with an air takedown. Getting seen during missions would often end up in friendly NPCs getting executed, so it made sense that you were trying to roleplay the best possible version of Kenway's memories. Now though, they've gotten rid of that stuff entirely, and you can play the missions in any way you want, with your approach often not really affecting anything. There's also a bunch of new content they've added in there too during certain sequences.
Any good ones?
Aye.
Like after that first mission when you meet the Templars, there's this whole new objective where you need to find a room at the nearby tavern, with Edward getting turned down and forced to sleep on the roof.
What? And have another brawl wreck the place? Out with you!
And then later on too, when you're chasing after the Sage, if you don't catch the guy in time, it ends up with a one-on-one where you've got to beat him up in a fist fight. And then shortly after that, when you're trying to rescue him, you first need to explore the area to find the guy who's got the key to his cell.
I wager Roberts will be behind the door that fits this key.
One of the biggest criticisms about the original game was the amount of missions where you had to slowly follow someone or eavesdrop on a conversation. So the fix that they've come up with here was just to let you bypass that shit entirely. Like that mission early on where you had to follow that bloke to the plantation was one that went on for like 15 minutes. As you followed him through the town, then to his ship, and then tailed him all the way to the island. Now you can just kill this guy instantly and read a note on his corpse to get the whereabouts of the island.
Beckford's man was headed for Cat Island.
And as for the eavesdropping missions, well, those are now much simpler too. And instead of NPCs walking through towns and going about their day-to-day business while having these conversations, which you had to cleverly and subtly listen in on, now they mostly just stand in one place.
So why bother?
And it seems that the range for being able to hear them talking is far bigger, to the point that they're almost unfailable. It is kind of weird though how for some of the missions it's like they didn't even bother updating anything. Like I'd argue that one of the more tedious ones is where you're tracking a gunboat through the swamps, moving at a snail's pace in the jackdaw as you try to keep up with it and stay hidden. And in Resynced, this is copied across more or less verbatim, without any real change or improvements.
Steady as she goes, Captain.
In fact, I think it might even be worse now because you can only move at the boat's slower speed.
There's always another way.
When you're harpooning now, you don't have to charge up the harpoons anymore and can just instantly throw them, making that stuff far easier.
He's a monster!
And you can still acquire all those legendary outfits, like the Templar outfit or the Mayan armor, but the change there is that this time the armor doesn't have an effect of its own. Instead, you get a trinket which comes with the added buff, which you can then choose whether or not to equip. Something which is actually pretty clever, because what it lets you do is choose between the outfit and the effects separately, in case you know you like one, but maybe not the other. Honestly though, I doubt that most people are really going to care about those kind of incidental changes, considering the core component of the gameplay is more about the ship combat, the melee combat, and the stealth anyway. And in that regard, getting around the jackdaw is still the same that it's ever been. You've got all the different weapons which you control by aiming the camera in different directions, and then the 3 sail modes for the different speeds. Though it does seem like storms are far more abundant now in Resynced, really limiting the amount of time you can actually use the travel sails. Just do it! Which I'm kind of thinking has been done just so they can show off this new lightning mechanic, where you get all these oddly telegraphed blasts of lightning coming down from the sky, which you obviously don't want to be under. Along with this new mechanic of sudden wind gusts, which come out of nowhere and blow you in different directions. Which, as far as I can tell, has only been added in to piss me off. Either way, though, it's still pretty fun getting into combat with other ships, dropping mortars and trading shots with your broadside cannons, before then hopping aboard and taking out the remaining crew. Then salvaging all the wood, metal, and other crap you can find to put back into upgrading the jackdaw. Ships all have those different difficulty ratings, and the further south you go, the tougher they get, so you can really control how easy or hard you want this stuff to be. What they've added is all these new ultimate fire modes, like being able to fire the chase cannons twice in a row, along with a heated shot for the broadside cannons.
Good form. It looks like we have it.
Both of which do objectively more damage at the expense of shorter range, though I think that increased damage easily outweighs that. And it's still funny how you can just lose track of time going around doing this stuff alone, because it really never does get old, where you're just constantly trying to earn enough stuff to get that new upgrade or cosmetic, even though that new upgrade cinematic looks like it's been severely nerfed. And I really like it now too, how when you're boarding a ship, you can simply kill a set amount of people and lower morale to the point that everyone gives up. Whereas in the original, the bigger ships would always have these extra objectives you had to do, like cutting down the flag or taking out the scouts, which got tedious very quickly. So simply being able to fight everyone on deck and be done with it does wonders for the overall flow. They still do have those scouts though, and it seems Ubisoft haven't figured out a way to make these guys not incredibly fucking annoying, because a single shot from their rifle is going to knock off almost your entire health bar. And also as well, like the melee combat on the ships can still be an absolute mess, with it often being insanely janky and hard to tell who's even trying to attack you. Not to mention at night time, it's damn near impossible to even tell who's who. Even more annoyingly is how sometimes when you've captured a ship, enemies can still attack you for a few seconds after. Yeah, okay. Still though, I think this is an improvement to taking over ships in the original, and you can even skip through those short cutscenes afterwards as well. The real main addition to the Jackdaw though is now being able to recruit these new officers, alongside Adewale.
I need a shipwright, and you're in need of better lodgings.
With a young tomboy named Lucy, and a shriveled up nutsack with the Padre.
I will join you as Master-at-Arms.
With these two each giving the Jackdaw different abilities.
I suppose I could look around, see what needs doing.
The Padre, for instance, gives you an improved ramming ability, speeding the Jackdaw up and allowing you to aim much easier. And this thing is just absolutely broken. Especially when you maxed out those ram upgrades normally, making some of the ship combat laughably easy. Lucy, on the other hand, gives you the ability to perfect brace. More or less like a perfect parry, where a well-timed brace during incoming fire can negate almost all of the damage. And you even start to notice how enemy ships telegraph when they're going to fire, especially with the Man of Wars, where all of the cannons on the side are going to light up at the same time, which is not only handy, but something that seems essential during some of the tougher fights, like against certain forts and the legendary ships. Yeah, man, those legendary ships are back, and they're about as broken and crushing as they've always been. The melee combat, despite all the other changes and updates, is still more or less the same too. At least in the sense that you're still primarily parrying enemies to leave them open for a takedown, along with dodging those unblockable attacks. It's just that chaining takedowns is now dependent on your weapon, with it being limited to 2, 3, or 4, as opposed to however many you could manage in the original. The other foil to that are the tougher enemies who can avoid your attacks, though pretty much all you need to do there is just shoot them with your pistols, which makes them available for a takedown anyway. I mean, look, like you can weaken them with standard attacks and dodge around them if you really want to, but simply shooting these assholes in the face and calling it a day is a far easier move. You can actually dodge incoming enemy fire though if you time it just right, and get up close to someone who's vulnerable, and you get a pretty awesome little pistol execution as well. Oh yeah, and turns out as well that enemies going bald is actually a design choice, supposed to be highlighting how their defenses are now lowered, whereas before, like in the preview, I just assumed I'd hit people so hard I'd given them alopecia.
Not good enough.
Seems they've also added back in that ability to instantly assassinate someone when they're caught up in a smoke bomb, which is something that wasn't in that preview build I played a while back. The only difference though is that the tougher enemies are going to actually run out of the smoke cloud, you know, instead of just standing there like an idiot and coughing their lungs up. So it all just kind of feels like they're trying to strike a balance between the combat in the original and then the combat in the newer titles like Shadows, removing the abundance of overpowered abilities and moves, replacing them with a much simpler front kick and a leg sweep. With the kick not even really serving any use, outside of the few times you can send someone into a wall and set them up for a takedown. There is also a new double takedown you can pull off during combat if you've got 2 stunned enemies standing near each other, but I think I can count the amount of times this happened to me in-game on one hand. All of the weapons have been massively simplified as well, going from the 60 odd or so we had in Shadows down to now barely a couple dozen, with some familiar ones also making a return in updated forms, like the pistol swords, which now give you 2 free pistol shots on enemies with a perfect dodge, which is, you know, kinda busted. So overall, like, it's not necessarily a better or worse combat system, it's just different. Really just following suit with every other third-person melee-focused game out there, and that it's all really just about parry timing. watching and waiting for enemies to strike before either blocking or dodging and then returning the favor. With the camera absolutely not doing you any favors in that regard, especially like I said when you're on ships or fighting enemies in these more cramped areas. Outside of all those moments when you're stabbing people in the face with your cutlasses, you'll equally be spending as much time hiding in the bushes and whistling at people as they pass you by. With the stealth also being more or less unchanged, with the only real new feature being that you can now manually crouch, though for some reason they removed the option to go fully prone and crawl around like we could in Shadows. It's still otherwise some very familiar mechanics, and the enemy AI is often still completely brain dead, flocking to bushes in droves despite you having just killed 2 of their buddies right in front of them. I do appreciate though how whistling more or less instantly attracts someone to your position, because it always felt like in the original game how you had to whistle like half a dozen times before someone would even come over to investigate. Now you do it once and they head right on over to check out what the noise was as if they're being paid by the hour. You do also get the rope dart very early on here, and it's actually far more useful as well, able to be used as a grappling hook to reel people in, which is kinda handy if you want to both stay hidden in the bushes, but also roleplay as Scorpion in the Assassin's Creed universe.
Get over here!
It does still have its old ability of being able to hang dudes from the treetops, but using it to reel in some clueless dickbag for an easy takedown is by far the better option. The only other major change here that I notice is that you don't seem to be able to swap between your weapons anymore. Like in the original, you could choose to equip either your swords, the hidden blade, or your fists, with it affecting the combat and takedown moves. Like using Edward's fist for instance, he'd simply beat people into submission, leaving them writhing around on the ground in pain. And in the case of stealth takedowns, if you're unarmed, he'd simply choke someone out. Seems now, though, your only option is just to straight up murder people. And I can't imagine why they got rid of this, unless it was just like one too many button prompts to worry about. And that is definitely something I noticed overall, is the amount of features that just feel like they've been scaled back, if not just completely restructured.
I can't believe the shite I'm hearing drop from your lips.
Like how the amount of collectibles you find in each area is far less. I mean, there might still be sea shanties and chests throughout all these main areas, but there's definitely less chests overall. And things like the Animus fragments are completely removed. Great Inagua, for instance, originally had 9 chests for you to find throughout the island. Here in Resynced, though, there's only 3. And in other areas like captured forts, you don't get a single chest at all. You don't get metal, wood, or cloth from taking over warehouses anymore either. Instead, it's only the resources you can sell for extra cash, like rum and sugar. This stuff now coming from taking over forts, with forts also having a far bigger cash payout as well. I mean, I think originally you got like a couple of thousand reales from a fort. Now it's 3,000 for the easy ones, 6,000 for medium, and then 8,000 for hard. Plus, I like it too how when you make it to the war room, you have to fight the commander who runs the fort. You're not just obliterating some poor surrendering number cruncher who was working there. I mean, it always did seem a bit weird to me how Edward would just annihilate that poor guy in the war room, while he just stood there completely defenseless. Speaking of making bank, you can now generate passive income back at the mansion, along with there being new building types around the island that can boost the speed of this. Which is handy considering how expensive some of the upgrades and gear is to buy. Yeah, and I thought the cost of living in Sydney was bad. Kenway's fleet has also been massively overhauled and stripped back as well. Now this was that side mode where you could capture all those various types of ships and then send them off to be used in this little minigame, with there being dozens of different expeditions to complete as you took out opposing ships in all these little battles. You'd go to Mexico, Canada, West Africa, and Europe, all to earn more cash and extra resources, with all this stuff running in the background in real time, where you could set them up overnight for instance, and then wake up in the morning to find a bunch of cash and loot waiting. And it was a really fun system that was constantly updating, so you always had something to do. Here though, it's far more limited, and the missions all take place in the West Indies, as opposed to across all these different countries. And to even start them, you first need to have taken over the fort in each area. It's not just about getting a fleet of man-o-wars either, considering you actually need the smaller ships for certain missions. And about all the Man of Wars are actually good for is lowering the risk in each of these areas, which seems to increase your chance of mission success or something. I don't know. I mean, I guess it is an improvement over the original, at least in the sense now that you don't have to sit through all these turn-based ship battles in real time, which, let's be honest, was about as much fun as watching dog shit turn white. But it does seem a lot simpler than it used to be, and after mucking about with it a few times there, I kind of forgot it existed.
Also true.
I'd say the dumbest change they've made, though, is how you check treasure maps. Now, in the original, you just went through your inventory in real time, you selected maps, pressed a single button, and then voila, the map came up, making it really easy to pop back to it for reference every time you were trying to double check the clues. Here though in Resynced, you have to pause the game, go into the codex menu, select the treasure map sub-menu, and then go down and select the map you want. Doing this every single time you want to recheck it, making it go from like 2 or 3 inputs to upwards of half a dozen.
It has to be buried somewhere there.
At least, if nothing else though, these are still in the same spots they've always been, so a 13-year-old walkthrough is also going to work here just as good.
There may be more chests like this one.
I do also need to mention that Resynced comes with all the expected bugs and glitches we've really come to expect from modern gaming. Like in regards to all the jank during combat when it comes to stuff like hit detection and the physics. Along with there being various visual glitches like the weather just completely changing, or the skybox not fully rendering in. One point in the middle of a fight, the game just decided to teleport me out into the ocean, which was even funnier because there wasn't even any kind of water impact on the water when it happened. Whenever it gets super windy, almost every bit of clothing or hair is usually going to go ballistic and look like it's not even working properly.
When you're hunted, it sometimes seems that every stranger is an enemy. On Juventud, we have been a truce since the death of the first Marcus, but this woman could reignite our dispute if her price is high enough.
And another common bug I had was where ships would just outright disappear, like vanish into thin air, often after I'd even opened fire on them.
What?
Probably the best one though was where the game would suddenly turn into Black Flag on ice as Edward started sliding all over the place like he was on skates. Plus, I mentioned before some of the audio issues when it comes to the mixing, where it's pretty common for the dialogue to be way louder than anything else. But sometimes the music doesn't work properly either, which happened to me during one of the game's more memorable and funny cutscenes, totally ruining the joke because the combat theme was still playing in the background, messing up the tone of the scene entirely.
Tell your friends we're stealing your goods, and we won't hurt nobody if everyone stays as still as a sandbar. You got that?
Please do repeat.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Overall though, like, it's not quite Black Flag 2077 or anything like that, but this kind of stuff just does detract a bit from the overall experience. Hopefully though, this stuff is going to be addressed, if not completely fixed by launch.
He's gone!
Considering I do know that Ubisoft dropped a massive patch a couple of days ago, and I'm going to guess that they're going to be updating this for the next couple of weeks. And I think the big takeaway looking back on all of this is that despite all the stuff they changed, be it for better or worse, this really is still Black Flag where it matters most, and that's in how the whole thing feels to play overall. Because whether or not you're taken on a fort in the middle of a thunderstorm or trying to catch the horizon as you cruise singing Drunken Sailor, it really is still an amazing vibe. Where you can spend entire play sessions getting sidetracked by this, that, or the other thing. Where the next thing you know, you've dropped another 6 hours into it and it's 2 AM in the morning.
Right. You're offended. I'll go.
That's really the biggest thing they had to recapture here, and I'd definitely say they've achieved it. It's still one of those games where you can play for 5 minutes or 5 hours, but still feel like you've spent your time well. And for the people who don't want much more than just being able to recapture that feeling they got 13 years ago, most likely won't give a shit about all the shortcomings. I mean, let's be real, right? People are still going to find things to bitch and complain about here, regardless of how it turned out. And entire YouTube careers are going to be sustained by people comparing mundane details in this to something you could do back in Red Dead Redemption 2. Like I said though, it doesn't really matter because the people who've decided they're going to play this have already made their minds up, along with the people on the other end of the spectrum who've already decided that they're going to hate it. So while this might not be a Splinter Cell or a Blood Dragon remake, it'll do. Oh yeah, before you go, don't forget to check out War Thunder for free today on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile, using my links in the pinned comment or that video description. And for those who are returning or haven't played for over 6 months, don't forget you can also get access to that massive bonus pack on PC and consoles, featuring premium vehicles, 100,000 silver lions, and that 7 days of a premium account. So yeah, once again, thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video.